or like Drake, and like references to him being like very sensitive because he's light skinned. Even though that one line he has still don't sit with me. Yeah, I'm light skinned, but I'm still a dark nigga. That just does not sit with me right. Every time I hear that, I'm like.
Okay, I'm gonna try to clarify it for him. I'm gonna try, okay? Don't hold me to it. What had happened was, he was saying, I'm light skinned, but you know how you have bright people and you got like, dark, like sad, like I can, like not like, like not.
What's up? This is the first episode of The Lemon Squeeze. Yeah. We turned up for real. All right. So basically, this episode will be on the topic of colorism. I would like to introduce my beautiful panel. First, we got Keontae Jones. He's a fourth year. What's your major?
Forensic science, and I have a concentration in physical evidence with a minor in chemistry.
I'm Nia Jones, and I'm a math major concentrating in stats.
I'm Destiny Brown. I major in exercise science and minor in psych, and I'm a senior.
I'm Taylor Maloney. I major in political science with a concentration in international studies and a minor in Arabic and Middle Eastern studies, and I'm a junior. Okay,
guys, so as you guys know, colorism is a very relevant issue that not only the Black community faces, but a lot of communities face. So as a group, if you guys could like give one solid definition of colorism as a group, what would it be?
Say just like having a preference or standard of like a like one skin tone and then like kind of degrading the rest.
So preference and standard.
Yeah.
Say preference and standard, or sometimes even like the discrimination or exclusion. But like she said, it's still based off of the skin tone, whether lighter or darker. It still has a basis on a different skin tone.
Same. But I would say it's within like a lot of ethnicities. So it's in multiple like ethnicities. It's not just one. It's a lot of cultures. Yeah.
I would just say like discrimination against like people with a certain tone, usually a darker tone, amongst communities, but within the same ethnic or social group.
Y'all basically on the same page. Like it is a multicultural issue where different skin tones face different levels of discriminatory problems, and it affects all of us, people of color, at least minorities. So we're gonna get right into this discussion. So the first question is, where do y'all think colorism came from? Like what's the origin of colorism?
Ooh, I think colorism comes from definitely like slavery. I think just between like the house slave, the field slave, that kind of I feel like engraved us all the way back then, like from our ancestors. I feel like they were conditioned to believe that way of thinking, you know what I'm saying?
Like the difference between like a darker and lighter skin.
Exactly. There was a thought process behind that by like the slave masters, because if they could kind of like condition us to feel that way about ourselves, or they were the ones who actually separated us, then eventually we're gonna start to be like, dang, like, man, they a house slave, you know what I'm saying? I'm out here in the field like because of my skin color. So we kind of got like conditioned, I feel like.
I say the origination of colorism really just comes from self-hatred within each respective community.
I would say it kind of stemmed from the European standard of beauty and just kind of spread everywhere else, and people thought, they had to be lighter to be prettier or more attractive.
I think it stemmed from slavery and just when they kind of like defined us as house slaves or like field slaves. I feel like they kind of conditioned us to feel like one color wasn't as important as the other.
I would just say it came, like, a big part of it came from colonialism, but also a big part of it came from, like I said, like classism, because like colorism developed in East Asia without the interference of like white Europeans. Like that came about on its own. So saying it without, in the context of European like colonialization, is kind of like too narrow to me.
I think the basis of where this came from is white supremacy. Sometimes you just gotta like look at the sheer amount of influence white people have had on each and every culture, even the cultures where they might be not directly be, you know, colonized or, you know, directly in contact with, but a lot of the issues, or the majority of the cultures that face it the most are cultures who have been colonized, Asians, African of descent, like American, obviously. And I definitely agree with you, like that house field mentality. Like, why do we have to fight them if they can just fight themselves? That's a much easier way to go about, you know, the destruction of the black community if they just hit each other. Like, we didn't even do nothing.
Like they're gonna do it themselves.
Exactly. At the end of the day, we know that lighter skinned people were in the house. Now I don't think that like necessarily like negates, because everyone went through it. Everyone went through it.
I do agree with you. I do believe that it all has its backgrounds in colonization, but the reason why, to like me and my perspective, I feel like it's a self-hatred issue, is because we've known that this is a problem that they're not going to help us with. This is a problem that we going to have to take it upon ourselves to fix. So now I feel like if we look at it and we look at it as, okay, we know that they're the ones who pinned us up against each other, but then we realize now that it's a problem within our own communities to where we're interjecting upon others who still look like us, who are closer skin tones to us than the white folks. Now I feel like that's what really opens up the conversation, allows us to help, like, in a sense, work on fixing the issue.
Like post-slavery, when they had stuff like paper bag tests and pencil tests and book tests. I don't know if you guys know about the other ones, but that's another thing. So it's like, obviously, like people who were mixed or like had fair skin and like fine hair, like they would basically have more access to do things than, you know, other people, because they were able to pass these tests that shouldn't have even been in place in the first place.
Since we're not like in like slavery anymore, it's more about the continuation of like internalized anti-blackness that a lot of people just don't want to recognize. And it works in the same way that like we talk about toxic masculinity, how it not only affects women but it affects men too. I think colorism works the same way. Purpose of like anti-blackness is going to hurt those who are the closest to the proximity of blackness, but it can also manifest itself in ways that like affect those who have a proximity to whiteness. It's just in a different form.
Have y'all ever witnessed or been a victim of colorism in any type of way?
I haven't really been a victim, or at least not that I noticed. But I do definitely see it on social media a lot. Like, say if this like beautiful dark skinned girl like posts a picture or something, people would be like, oh, she's pretty, but she's too dark, or like something like that. Being lighter skinned, I feel like because you're the preferred like type of black person, that I feel like it can easily just like go over your head because you don't have to worry about it. But yeah, it's still an issue, and I still do like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
So you think like coming from like a place of like privilege kind of blinds you in a way?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. That's a really good point.
I've definitely like witnessed it like growing up. Maybe I was a victim and I didn't realize it. Witnessing what my like dark-skinned friends like had to go through, or like the jokes that were told, and then kind of how they had to like brush it off or pretend like it didn't get to them, and then not really knowing why. That kind of like, that got to me too. Or just recently, like on social media, like there's just a lot. There's a lot of colorism, a lot of examples, and it's just, but seeing your friends go through it, I think, is like kind of the worst part, because you got to see them like brush it off.
It's always in the little forms though. Like my mother, she would always, like when we went to the beach, she would stay up under the umbrella, like, oh, I don't need to get darker, or things like that. Or her hair, I've never seen my mother's natural unrelaxed hair in my life. So like little things like that definitely are indicative.
Have I witnessed colorism? Yes. A lot of my niggas, like my people, you know what I'm saying? Like certain things that they say about darker skinned women,
Question coming up, yeah.
It's just it's gonna come up. But oh my gosh, like, and like when I was like a younger kid, I didn't really, I kind of laughed along with them. I'm a bit, I will say that, like, it's I did, but did I agree with it? No. But yeah, like saying, oh man, like, what I'm saying, she got body nice, but she's a little too dark, I wouldn't date her. I would just have sex with her. You feel me? I feel like with black men, is they view darker skinned women as more as sex symbols, and like lighter skinned women as more as trophies.
They'll make a comparison to lighter skinned women as like your ideal like wife type woman, while like you said, viewing darker skinned women as just objects. You'll hear them use often offenses as like them looking out for their future family or everything, or like they don't want like their future kids to go through the same thing that they went through.
Do y'all agree with that sentiment of like, I don't want to have dark skinned kids because I don't want them to go what I went through, or I don't want them to go through what I went through? Like, do y'all agree with that? Or because I feel like at like the most, like at the base of it, like at like the very center of it, we don't get treated good. So
instinct aspect too, I definitely believe that. But you as a parent, you're coming to the terms with the realization of the fact that you didn't effectively try to address these systems throughout your life, and now you realize that you're going to be a parent, and it's like kind of a last ditch effort to trying to make sure that you don't have to confront it too. Like it's a subconscious evasive maneuver, just like men who don't want to have daughters because they know how they treat women and they don't want to do it. That's how I feel like it is. Like there is a paternal instinct, but like as a parent, like things are going to happen to your children. Your kids are going to die one day. All of these things are natural. And then like, so the question is, are you going to avoid it, or are you going to face it head on? Are you going to like accept your child the way they are?
I feel like it's important too, like at what point are you going to start teaching like self-love? Like, and like you were saying, I feel like that comes from like, I know, right? I feel like that comes from what you were saying, Taylor, because like the parents, like you're scared because you might not love yourself. So like those are like lessons that you still have to grasp for yourself that you haven't. So it's just like you got to deal with that first, like loving yourself, and then don't base your partner off of like the fact that you can't love yourself. Teach your kid how to love themselves, like not based on their skin color. You're just encouraging like colorism. Like, what you doing, bruh? What's happening? Like
that kind of like segues us into like the next question. So like, what are y'all thoughts on preferences?
My thoughts on preferences, I feel like it's good to have a preference, but at the same time, it depends on the basis of what your preference is made off of.
I think people are entitled to their preferences, but they need to realize that those are completely man-made and influenced by society. My AFM teacher, he teaches here at VCU, his name's Chioki. I love him. He was telling us about how preferences are like we think that we're born with them, but we're really not born with an innate sense of preference. So like things that you think are your preferences are probably completely formed by society, and then sometimes in some instances like biological factors. So I think preference is okay, but I think if you're going to have them, you need to acknowledge the systems that those support. And then also like, if you don't like black women, just like keep that to yourself. If you don't feel the need, I don't feel the need to announce that like I don't like a certain type of person. So I think that is like important to recognize.
I like your point about like we weren't born with like preferences. Like I like that. But like if you do happen to have a preference, it's okay. Like if I'm like, all right, I don't like brown skinned dudes, I feel like that's a reflection of me not liking myself. I don't know. That's just me though.
You can say your preference, but don't bring down anybody else. Like, why should they have to feel bad? Like, they're irrelevant. So, like, what's the purpose, you know?
So I feel like as long as you are grounded and you are knowledgeable and you are understanding in what life experiences and what societal factors form your preferences, then I feel like that's okay. I feel like it's in a sense when people ignore those certain factors and they build a certain preference not even off of logic, or like just because they had necessarily one bad experience and they haven't even taken the time to think of that bad experience and think it could turn out different. So I really just feel like preference is okay as long as you're aware of where it comes from.
We can have preferences, and that's cool, but keep it a preference. Don't deny beauty in something else just because, you know what I'm saying? Because at that point, it's not a preference. You're just hating. And I feel like I keep going to black men, but we got some issues, black men. Like it goes deep. I feel like a lot of black men do not take the time to really unpack themselves. The guys who are saying, she too dark for me. Why is she too dark for you? You're darker than her. Why is she too dark for you? Honestly, like, does that become a problem of self-hate? Like, you know what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying. Self-hate, right?
Closest to life experiences with you, and like y'all could really kick it off, but then you knocking her because then she just a little bit darker than you. I'm like, you blocking your own blessings, my brother.
I feel like when you find somebody and you love them, they love you back. Like, that's all that matters. And I feel like a lot of times the person you end up with, like, is usually not your preference. Have your preference, but still, like,
Be open.
keep your options open. You never know who you're gonna meet.
This conversation, like, the main kind of person we're talking to is black men, but like it does go both ways. Like, colorism does not only affect black women. Like, that same effect is the parallel to like black women not wanting to date light-skinned men because they view them as more feminine and stuff like that. Like, we associate like blackness with like passion, masculinity, and raw feelings and raw emotions, very like, and so we view whiteness as refined and like civilized and things like that. So like, I feel like that also plays into why like black men are so desired right now too. But it goes against dark-skinned women because like there's that kind of edge that they're too strong or they're too loud or they're too passionate. So like, it's not desirable in a woman to be raw, strong, or passionate, but it is in a man.
Then I feel like it's also a double-edged sword, because then it's like, it's also why we're more desired, but then you also still see certain groups discriminate because of that, because then they'll have this look like, oh, because he's a little darker and like dresses a certain way, like they'll automatically like mistake him for a thug or something, and they'll be like, I don't want to bring that home in like my civilized home, when come to find out like that's just like his preference, that's just his style, that's just how he dressed, but that's not like who he is.
I think it just all boils down to just accepting everybody for like how they are, like instead of just judging off their color. Like, let's get back to the basics and just really figure out who people are. Actually take them for like a person before you take them for like a color. Like, that's it.
That is facts. All right, guys. Is it recording? It's been recording. All right, guys. So we will be.
What's happening?
Let's pull it back.
What the? What I do?
mean, I just didn't. It just
We
didn't
weren't ready
flow.
for you to ask that.
Yeah.
All right. What are we supposed to be doing?
Just like act like we're about to end the episode.
Okay.
All right, y'all. So we will continue this discussion further in the second episode of Lemon Squeeze. So make sure you tune in. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for more on Sageway. And we will see y'all next time on the Lemon Squeeze. Peace, love, and blessings.